Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining the whale watching tour. Before we go out, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some of the amazing species that we might see today. We're going to start with one of my favorites, the humpback whale. So just quickly, as an overview, I'll show you the poster. This is the humpback whale. They can grow between 15 and 18 meters long. They can weigh between 25 and 40 tons. The females tend to be a little bit bigger than the males. You can see that they're this kind of dark gray, black color with white or patchy undersides. And so it's dark on top, patchy white below, including below their tail. I'll show you another picture of that in a little while. They have this elongated jaw with pleats on their chin. That's not easy to see from this, but we'll talk more about those pleats. They have the longest pectoral fins in the world, so that's like your arm. They live to be about 50, and they can be found in every ocean on the planet. So just to set some expectations for today, what the whales are doing here, humpback whales are not living full-time in the waters around New Zealand. What they're doing is traveling. So they're on their migration route. It's May, so that's autumn here in the Southern Hemisphere. And so that's the perfect time to catch them moving between their southern summer feeding areas down here in the Antarctic, up through, and you can see how they are hugging the east coast of New Zealand or cutting through the Cook Strait on their way to their more tropical, warmer, shallower waters, which is their winter breeding ground. So that's where they will either be breeding or giving birth, depending. They don't have a calf every year. So some of them are traveling up there to give birth, others are breeding. And so they're going to be there for the winter. That journey, and it does depend on the group, but that journey is around 8,000 kilometers. So pretty amazing. And we're just lucky enough to be right there in the middle. And at this time of year, we might get lucky enough to actually see them. So other things to keep in mind, just to set our expectations and kind of know what to think about and what to look for. Humpback whales, when they're traveling, they surface about every 5 to 15 minutes, and they're doing that to breathe. So as we've mentioned, whales, all whales, including humpbacks, are warm-blooded, air-breathing mammals, just like us. So they're just radically adapted for life at sea. But they do need to come to the surface to breathe. So they're going to come up every 5 to 15 minutes, which means that they're going to stay underwater for way longer than the dolphins that we've talked about previously. What that also means is that if we do get so lucky to spot a humpback whale at the surface, it might just be coming up to catch a breath, and then it might go down again for between 5 and 15 minutes. And so if we see one, it doesn't mean we're going to necessarily get a chance to see it again. And as you know, we don't chase whales. We're not going to do anything drastic to kind of get closer to it, and we're certainly not going to cut off its exit route. So we hope to see some. If we see one and it goes back down, we may not see it again. We may see the next one that comes along. So again, just to kind of understand how these animals are moving through the space, what they're doing here, and what that means for us on the boat. If they want to leave, they can dive for like up to 45 minutes. So if they want to leave, they'll be gone. But we're actually pretty good at finding humpback whales on this boat. We probably, we are likely to see some. I hope that we do. But with wild animals, we just don't know. And of course, we are always going to keep the animals' safety and their comfort as our highest priority. So let's talk about what could happen. As soon as we get out on the water, we are going to start scanning the surface of the ocean. And one thing that we're going to be looking for is the blow of a humpback whale. Whales and dolphins, they all come up to the surface to breathe, like we talked about. But they have different shapes and sizes and configurations of the blow itself. So just to talk about what that blow is, whales have a blowhole, or in the case of baleen whales, they have 2 blowholes. So a baleen whale's blowholes, it's like your nose. It's like your nose has traveled to the back of your head. And that is part of this adaptation for living at sea. So it means they can come to the surface to take a breath without having to pull their whole head above the surface, like I do when I go swimming. So they have this nose on the back of their head. It's a double blowhole. They also have a large size, they have large lungs, and all of that combined make for a really distinctive shape. So I'll show you another poster. Different whales, different cetaceans have distinctive shapes. This one's really cool, kind of double horns. Humpback whales, what you're looking for is a big, kind of puffy or even tree-shaped puffy blow. And I keep using this word blow. What it is air. You know that. It's air coming out of their lungs. It almost looks like a spray of water, like a jet of water. But that's because what you're looking at is warm air from inside this warm-blooded mammal's lungs that is hitting the cold air of the atmosphere. And so there's some condensation that you're seeing. So it's not a jet of water. It is a jet of air. But that condensation makes it really, really visible, which is good for us. It makes it easier to see. So other things that we might see beyond just catching sight of a whale's blow, let's hope that we see some of their body. And we have a good shot at that because humpback whales are actually really well known and famous for their surface behavior. They're called acrobatic, which again is crazy to think of a 40-ton animal being acrobatic, but they really are. They're incredibly powerful. They can dive, build up a really big head of steam, and launch themselves above the water or mostly above the water. And then, of course, they come down splashing really hard. That's called breaching. I'll show you a picture. So this is a humpback. You can see it's partly out of the water. It's about to fall back. Sometimes they fall back on their back, and sometimes they fall back on the front. We don't know. They do what they want. Other things that you might see is just that flipper itself coming out of the water. Pectoral fin slapping is one thing that they do, slapping the water with that huge fin. They might pick their tail up out of the water, and they might just do that by itself, smack that tail on the water. Or when they dive, you see this really graceful thing happen where at first they kind of arch their back and you see the little tiny dorsal fin, and then they often pull their tail all the way out of the water and then it goes down. So a couple opportunities to see the tail. And the tail is really interesting because we're looking at the bottom, the underside of the tail here, and you can see the black and white markings. So they're going to be black on top, but then differently marked on the bottom, either mottled or sometimes they have scratches and little scars there too. The markings on the tail of a humpback whale are so distinctive that scientists use them like a fingerprint to identify individual whales. So one thing that you'll see us do if we're lucky enough to see some humpbacks is we'll be taking photographs of the whales and trying to catch a photograph of that tail because that can be contributed to the New Zealand Department of Conservation. For one, they have a database and you can download the Sea Spotter app yourself and help out with this. But we'll be contributing photos so that we are being part of this research program that's keeping track of the whales. And they're doing that for all different reasons to understand how many there are, where they are, where they're going to, where they're coming from, how long they live. Lots of really amazing science is happening just through that identification of the whales. So people sometimes ask, why do they do these things? Why are they jumping out of the water? Why are they slapping the water? And I mean, the truth is, we don't always know. Sometimes from context, you can make a theory. One of my favorite theories is that they are playing. So it's a beautiful day. We talk about dolphins playing and cavorting all the time, right? So why can't a humpback whale be playing, jumping out of the water? It's a beautiful day. That's what it looks like to me. Some of the other things that they could be doing, they might be trying to dislodge parasites that live on their skin. So whales do suffer from parasites in the water. There are a lot of little animals that would love to hitch a ride on a whale. So you can see how jumping out of the water or smacking the water really hard could just kind of slough off a large parasite load, right? They might be communicating. One of the when they make that loud noise, they're also making a large reverberation in the water. And whales themselves are really sensitive to both underwater noise and underwater reverberations. So they could be using that behavior to communicate with each other. We just don't really know. They might be showing aggression. And since I mentioned that, I'll just note that these whales are not going to put us in danger. They are obviously large. They are obviously can do whatever they want, but they're actually really famous for being very gentle around humans. So that's not something that we have to worry about. We know how to keep you safe. We've already talked about our safety procedures here on the boat, but I don't want you to worry that the whales have aggression towards us. They don't. So the last behavior that I can talk about that is a little bit better understood is the feeding strategies of humpback whales. I'm going to talk about baleen. This is a piece of baleen. So whales can be categorized as toothed whales or baleen whales. And when I talk about whales in this context, so biologists, scientists group all of the cetaceans under the category of whales. So they're including dolphins, porpoises, what we call whales, under whales. So there are toothed whales, and that does include all the dolphins and porpoises, as well as sperm whales. And then there are baleen whales, and that includes humpbacks. It includes blue whales. So the largest animals to ever live, right, are baleen whales. They don't have teeth in their mouth. They have this stuff, which is a filter. So they're filter feeders. The largest animals to ever live are eating some of the tiniest creatures in the world. Krill, which is a small crustacean, makes up the majority of their diet. They'll also sometimes scoop up small schooling fish. That kind of thing is really abundant in the Antarctic waters where they go to feed. And it better be, because these are huge animals. So they have to eat an enormous amount of krill and other small things. And they are really well adapted for doing that. So they, in addition to the baleen, which I'll get back to, they have these huge mouths. You saw the picture, wide, long jaw. And then those pleats that I mentioned underneath their throat, those actually expand. So they'll find a concentration of krill. They'll come up to it, under it. They'll open that huge mouth. Those pleats in their throat will expand, and they'll just engulf an incredible amount of water with the krill inside of it. And then they'll close their mouth mostly, and then they'll push that excess water through the baleen plates, which again, have that really frilly kind of filter shape. They'll push all that excess water out, and the filter, the baleen, will capture that krill, and the tiny fish and things that are in there. And then all they have to do is sweep it off with their tongue and swallow it. So this is what they use to feed instead of teeth. And it's made out of keratin, which is the same thing that makes rhinos' horns. It makes horses' hooves. Birds use keratin for their beaks and their claws and their feathers. Reptiles use it for their scales. And in people, keratin is your fingernails, it's your hair, it's in your skin. So it's incredibly tough and flexible and versatile. It's used throughout the animal kingdom. And in baleen whales, it is used to create this filter that just is perfectly adapted to their diet. So there's more to say about humpbacks feeding and hunting strategies, but I'm going to leave it there. And that's because we're probably not going to see them hunting or feeding today. What blows my mind about humpback whales is that they are probably fasting. They are understood to mostly fast or to completely fast. That means not eat on their migration, on that long 8,000 kilometer migration, and on their breeding grounds. So the next time they get a good meal is going to be when they return to the Southern Ocean in the summer. And again, I just can't imagine, right? So that means that while they're in their feeding grounds, they have to be just packing on stores of fat that are going to sustain them through their migration, through giving birth, through nursing and raising their calves, and then through the migration back. Now, we don't know everything about humpback whales. It is believed that they'll catch a bite when they can, if they can, but they're primarily not eating. And that is also partly because their food source just isn't available in the tropics where they go. There's not a lot of krill up there. It's not actually a great place for them to feed. So I know we're all eager to get on the boat. I'll leave it there, but if you want to talk more about the hunting or feeding strategies of humpback whales or anything more about them as we're on our way and as we're looking for signs, please just take me aside. I can't wait to talk to you more about humpback whales. So there's more to say, but I'm going to leave it there for now. And I'll just finish by thanking you for choosing a responsible whale watching company. We're so glad you're here.